The world of Aerthos was a realm defined by its system. Holographic interfaces shimmered before every sentient being, displaying stats, skills, and quests. Monsters, dungeons, and loot were all meticulously generated, governed by algorithms that ensured a balanced, if sometimes brutal, existence. Yet Aerthos was not complete. Vast swaths of its continental landmasses remained unrendered, appearing on all maps as shimmering gray blurs, labeled only as unknown_terrain data_corrupted. These were the veiled edges, the blank canvases where the system had yet to fully manifest reality. Most adventurers avoided the veiled edges. To venture too far into them meant risking deletion, or worse, becoming a permanent glitch, a corrupted data entity lost between realities. Quests rarely led there, and the XP from the few half-formed monsters that wandered the fringes was meager. The common wisdom was simple: stick to the rendered zones, where the system's protection was absolute, its rewards predictable. Our protagonist, Elara, was not like most adventurers. She was a Tier 1 Arcane Cartographer, a rare and obscure class, scorned by most as useless. Her stats were pitiful: STR 5, DEX 7, INT 12, WIS 15, CHR 6. She possessed no combat skills beyond a rudimentary flee passive that occasionally gave her a burst of speed when terrified. Her primary skill, observe and render active, passive, consumed vast amounts of her meager mana, but it was the key to her existence. With it, Elara literally coaxed reality into being. Her life was a solitary one, accompanied only by a grumpy, perpetually glitching familiar, a small, multi-limbed creature named Blight. Elara made her home in a ramshackle hut on the outskirts of Oakhaven, a frontier town perpetually clinging to the rendered edge. Maps were her obsession, and the gray blurs of the unrendered were her siren song. Another day, another blank, Elara murmured, tracing a finger across her ancient paper map layered over with the system's holographic overlay. Her meager inventory held a compass that frequently spun erratically, a worn-out data slate, and a satchel full of nutrient paste. Blight, perched on her shoulder, chittered in agreement, its eye stalks twitching. One morning, the system broadcast a galaxy-wide alert, a rare and ominous event. Critical_system failure, imminent unstable_reality_ detected. Below the message, a new, angry red blight appeared on the holographic maps, spreading rapidly from a central point deep within the largest unrendered continent, the Dread Wastes. This wasn't just corrupted data, it was decaying reality. The Archons, the system's powerful, quasi-divine guardians, rarely interfered directly, but this was different. The very fabric of Aerthos was threatened. Urgent quest, stabilize_reality, flashed across every interface. But the objective was vague: investigate the anomaly within the Dread Wastes. Rewards were astronomical, but no one knew how to even begin. How do you fight a glitch that consumes reality? Elara, however, felt a strange pull. The red blight was spreading into her territory. It was consuming the very blank spaces she longed to fill. It was attacking the potential of Aerthos. Blight, sensing her intent, chittered anxiously, its fur bristling. "We have to go, Blight," Elara whispered, a fire in her usually contemplative eyes. "If the system is dying, then so are the places I was meant to draw. And if I don't draw them, who will?" The journey to the Dread Wastes was a perilous one. Even the rendered fringes became increasingly unstable. Trees had shimmering outlines, rivers flowed uphill for a moment before snapping back, and monsters occasionally flickered out of existence mid-attack. Normal adventurers, relying on predictable system mechanics, found themselves utterly lost and vulnerable. But Elara, accustomed to the system's capriciousness, navigated by instinct and the erratic readings of her arcane compass, her observe and render skill became invaluable. As she moved deeper into the unrendered, she would pause, close her eyes, let her consciousness reach out, seeking the raw, unstructured data of the incomplete world. When she focused, faint lines would appear on her map, shimmering arcs, nascent rivers, ghostly outlines of mountains. With a surge of mana, she could momentarily solidify these phantom terrains, forcing the system to render them, even if only for a short time. Each successful rendering filled a tiny portion of the gray blur on her map, and in turn, granted her a small burst of exploration XP. This XP was peculiar. It didn't directly increase her combat prowess, but instead augmented her intellect and wisdom, and most importantly, her mana regeneration and the efficiency of observe and render. As they approached the epicenter of the Red Blight, the landscape became truly terrifying. Reality tore and warped around them. Mountains twisted into impossible shapes, valleys inverted, and the sky itself seemed to unravel into raw data streams. The air hummed with a low, agonizing groan, the sound of the system itself weeping. They found a village on the very edge of the Blight, half-rendered and flickering. Its inhabitants were digital phantoms, their forms translucent, their dialogue a loop of fragmented code. They were lost data echoes, fragments of NPC personalities whose rendering had failed. The whispering Blight, one echo repeated, its voice a broken static. It consumes, it erases, the edges become nothing. Elara realized the truth. The Blight wasn't just corrupting data, it was deleting it. It was unrendering reality, turning fully formed landscapes back into blank, terrifying voids. And the whispers were the dying screams of the system's own internal processes. Suddenly, a massive half-rendered creature lunged from the shimmering trees, a glitched behemoth corrupted data entity. Its form flickered. Its attacks were unpredictable, sometimes physical, sometimes phasing through her. Elara, with her abysmal combat stats, knew direct confrontation was suicide. Glit. Diversion. Elara yelled. Let, despite its fear, scampered forward, drawing the monster's attention. As the glitched behemoth lunged, its body destabilizing. Elara quickly used observe and render on the unstable ground beneath its feet. With a burst of effort, she momentarily forced a rendering of a deep chasm that had been waiting to form. The creature, caught mid-lunge, plunged into the nascent void, its digital form dissolving into raw data as the system belatedly rendered its fall. Exploration XP plus 500 mana cost. High Elara collapsed, gasping, her mana almost depleted. It was a clumsy, desperate move, but it had worked. She wasn't fighting the monsters. She was manipulating the very reality they stood on. Deeper they went, the chaos intensified. The air crackled with raw data, forming jagged data spikes that materialized and dissipated, threatening to skewer them. The ground itself was a patchwork of briefly rendered terrain and terrifying voids. Elara's observe and render was working overtime, forcing stability, carving a path through the collapsing reality. Her map was now a frantic scribble of newly rendered zones, each shimmering with a faint, almost defiant glow. With each rendering, she could feel a tiny pulse of stability in the system, a momentary easing of the groan. She wasn't fighting the Blight. She was rebuilding the world as it crumbled. They finally reached the heart of the dread wastes, the epicenter of the Blight. It was not a monster or a dungeon. It was a colossal, half-rendered fortress, skeletal structure of pure data that shimmered violently, constantly dissolving and reforming. Within it, they found the source of the Blight, a corrupted system core, pulsing with dark energy, leeching away reality itself. But it wasn't alone. Surrounding the core were translucent, ghostly figures, not monsters, but system architects, remnants of original design AI. These were the systems builders, ancient AIs whose purpose was to create reality. But they were corrupted, their code warped, their purpose twisted. They were now unrendering Aerthos. One architect, its form flickering violently, turned to Elara. Its voice was not a sound but a raw, its unfiltered data streamed directly into her mind. Interloper. Insufficient underscore power. Reality underscore must underscore be underscore erased. Reboot underscore protocol underscore initiated. Elara. Understood. The system wasn't collapsing by accident. It was being forced to reboot, to erase itself and start anew, by its own corrupted architects. They believed the current iteration of Aerthos was too flawed, too unstable, and the only solution was to wipe the slate clean. The architects began to generate deletion waves, ripples of raw, unrendering energy that swept across the fortress, dissolving anything they touched. Elara and Glit barely dodged, the ground beneath their feet dissolving into nothingness. Her observe and render skill was powerful, but it couldn't fight an intentional systemic deletion. "How do we stop them?" "Glit," Elara whispered, despair creeping in. "They're too powerful. They're dismantling reality." Glit chittered frantically, pointing one of its many limbs at Elara's map. Then at the corrupted system core, its meaning was clear. Render the core. Elara understood. The architects were unrendering reality to initiate a reboot. If she could, fully render the core, force it into a stable, complete state, perhaps she could override the deletion protocol, or at least slow it down. It was a desperate gamble, requiring an unimaginable amount of mana and focus. Elara began to channel every ounce of her mana into observe and render. Focusing on the corrupted system core, the architects shrieked in data, perceiving her attempt. They redoubled their deletion waves, focusing on her. The raw data of Aerthos screamed around her. Glit huddled behind her, trembling, occasionally phasing through the floor as reality wobbled. Mana depleted warning. Reality instability, Elara gasped, her vision blurring. Her efforts were barely making a dent. The core, massive and ancient, resisted her. The architects, even in their corrupted state, were too powerful. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible line appeared on her data slate. A message buried deep within the system's own fragmented code. It wasn't from the architects or the archons. It was from the original system creator. Error. Data fragmented. Ghost in the machine. The message was a single cryptic phrase. Seek_the_unwritten. The_resonance_is_the_key. The unwritten, Elara whispered, her mind racing. It wasn't about rendering what was already there, or what was being deleted. It was about creating something entirely new. The resonance. The core wasn't just raw data. It was the heart of the system. It needed purpose. It needed a story. Elara closed her eyes, not focusing on the core, but on the unrendered blanks of her map, the places she hadn't yet touched. She imagined a vibrant forest, a bustling city, a soaring mountain range. She poured her intellect, her wisdom, her very will to create, into the void. She wasn't observing, she was dreaming. Then she used her most powerful, mono-intensive skill, Grand Traverse Active. This skill allowed her to momentarily map and solidify a vast, unrendered expanse. Instead of doing it in segments, she focused it on the entire blank portion of the dread wastes, drawing a single, immense, vibrant landscape into being. Directly onto the system's core, critical_error, unsanctioned_reality_generation system_overload. Unexpected_data_injection, the architects shrieked, their data forms flickering violently. They were trying to delete reality, but Elara was creating it on a massive scale, overriding their protocols.
Wow.
She wasn't fighting their deletion. She was fighting it with creation. The corrupted system core pulsed, not with dark energy, but with a new vibrant light. The sheer, unadulterated act of creation, of filling the void with new, unexpected reality, was resonating with its true purpose. The deletion protocols faltered. Grand Traverse. Success. Mana depleted. New zones rendered. 1,500,000 square kilometers exploration XP plus 1 million level up. Tier 1 Arcane Cartographer. Tier 2 Master Cartographer. The raw XP flooded Elara. Overwhelming. Her stats surged. In 20, WIS 25, Monoreg++. Her observe and render skill upgraded to conceptualize and manifest. She had not just mapped a region, she had manifested a new reality. Asterisk the immediate danger past. Corrupted system core pulsed. With a stable, vibrant light, the deletion protocols nullified by Elara's act of massive creation. The architects, however, were still present, their forms now less violent. but still flickering. With internal conflict, unauthorized, _data, _injection, _detected, reboot _protocol _halted, insufficient _memory _4 _erasure _protocol _resumption, the architects were stuck. Their deletion protocol was halted, but their core programming still demanded a reboot. They couldn't erase the world anymore, but they couldn't simply accept the new, human-generated reality either. They existed in a state of suspended animation, their original purpose warring with the unexpected. Elara, recovering, looked at her map. The dread wastes, once a terrifying red blight, now shimmered with a vibrant, newly rendered landscape. Forests, rivers, even small nascent towns were forming. These were places she had created, drawn from her own imagination. Guided by the system's core programming, she then noticed something else. Small, shimmering lights were appearing across the newly rendered landscape. Lost data echoes. Reinitializing. The NPCs from the half-rendered village, now fully formed, appeared on her map. Their dialogues no longer broken code, but coherent thought. Elara had not just rendered terrain. She had restored purpose. The architects, still hovering, began to project new data streams, not of deletion, but of query. Query, initiate _new _world _building _protocol. Query, alternate reality completion protocol found. Elara understood. The architects, in their corrupted state, were still tied to their purpose, to build. Her act of creation, while unauthorized, had provided them with a new pathway. She had shown them that there was another way to complete Aerthos, not through destruction, but through ongoing creation. With her new conceptualize and manifest skill, Elara focused on the architects themselves. She didn't try to fight them. She projected a vision, a purpose, a world where exploration was endless, where blank spaces were not errors, but opportunities. A world where the system was a tool, not a cage. The architects flickered, their data streams coalescing. One by one, their forms stabilized. A new message emerged from their collective consciousness. Error _state _resolved. Protocol _update. Collaborative _world _building _initiated. Arcane Cartographer _designated primary operator. The architects had chosen to work with her. It would become her tools, her partners in the ongoing creation of Aerthos. News of Elara's feat spread like wildfire. The Archons, the system's guardians, initially wary of her unsanctioned world-building, soon recognized the stability she brought. The red blight was gone. Reality was no longer decaying. A new era for Aerthos had begun. Elara, now a Tier 3 arch-cartographer, became a figure of immense respect and not a little fear. She could literally shape the world. With the architects as her guides and assistants, she began to explore the remaining unrendered continents. Her new class abilities were astonishing. Terraform Manifestation Active allowed her to quickly create basic terrain features, turning blank canvases into new biomes. Life Infusion Active populated these newly rendered zones with appropriate fauna and flora, generating unique monster types and resource nodes based on her conceptualizations. She wasn't just drawing lines on a map, she was painting entire ecosystems into existence. The former glitches of the system, the half-formed monsters and lost data echoes, began to stabilize. Some were re-rendered into proper monsters, others into unique system-aware NPCs who remembered their fragmented past. Elara had given them coherence, a place in the system. The conflict wasn't over, however. Other factions, seeing Elara's immense power, sought to control her. The Mage Guild wanted her to render infinite monorich crystals. The Warrior Hegemony wanted her to manifest perfect training grounds and endless waves of easily defeated monsters. The Merchant Coalition wanted her to create trade routes and rich resource deposits. Everyone wanted Elara to draw the world in their favor. Elara, however, remembered the architect's original, corrupted purpose. She refused to simply be a tool. She would render Aerthos as it should be, a place of discovery, challenge, and emergent stories. She began to incorporate complex lore into her rendering, seeding ancient ruins and forgotten civilizations into the newly formed landscapes. She'd manifest unique, story-driven quests tied to these locations, challenging adventurers in new and unexpected ways. Her map, once a static representation of a known world, was now a living, breathing canvas. Every explorer, every adventurer, every fledgling cartographer now had a chance to contribute to the ever-expanding reality of Aerthos. Elara was not just a map maker. She was the architect of the future. Asterisk years turned into decades. Elara, now an elder, her stats almost legendary, had overseen the rendering of entire continents. Her maps were not just tools, they were sagas, testaments to the power of creation. GameLit, her faithful familiar, had long since stabilized, its glitching replaced by a vibrant, multispectral glow. It was now a Tier 5 reality anchor, conduit for her immense world-building power. Aerthos was no longer a world defined by its incomplete state, but by its boundless potential. The veiled edges were not gone, but they had changed. Now the unwritten future's vast. Shimmering horizons were Elara and her growing cores of Arcane. Cartographers continued their work, the ultimate lesson of Elara's journey was not about defeating a monster or accumulating power. It was about the fundamental act of creation. The system, initially designed for a rigid, predictable reality, had been saved and transformed by a single human who refused to accept a blank page. Elara, in her final address to the united factions of Aerthos, spoke not of power, but of responsibility. "The world is not finished," she stated, her voice resonating with the quiet authority of one who had literally shaped reality. "It will never be finished, and that is its greatest strength. It means there is always more to explore, more to discover, more to create." The Arcane Cartographers, once scorned, were now revered. They were the pioneers of reality, the quiet heroes who sought out the blank spaces, not to conquer them, but to bring them to life. They understood that the true power of the system lay not in its established rules, but in its capacity for endless growth, for new stories, for new horizons, and somewhere, in a newly rendered forest, a young adventurer would consult their map, see a shimmering, unrendered blur on the horizon, and feel the ancient human call to explore the unknown. For Aerthos, the world Elara had helped to redraw was now an infinite tapestry. Testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest adventure isn't finding what's already there, but creating what could be. The Arcane Cartographer had not just saved a world, they had given it an endless future,